Hello, this is Katie. Today we're going to be looking at doing some knotting, so knotting with pearls and gemstones. If you take a look at my previous video, everything that I got here, apart from these, was in my latest Relax and Craft subscription box. So I thought we'd do a demonstration with the kit that we got. So we're going to be making a knotted pearl and rose quartz necklace. We're going to be using everything that we got in the kit. So we're going to be using the Nylon Power cord. So I'm going to be using the pink one. This is how it comes. It comes in a little packet like this. You see this little bit here? This is a needle. So the needle is already attached for you. So it makes life so much easier for threading. It's already attached. Everything will thread on beautifully on there. I've got my beautiful freshwater pearls. I've got my 4mm rose quartz, and I've got my findings. So at each end, so to begin with, we're going to add the clasp. I've added a little jump ring onto there. We've got a not a seed bead, a spacer bead. We've got a wire guardian. So if you've not seen a wire guardian before, where's it gone? That is a wire guardian. So your thread goes up one side, around that groove at the top and down the other. It protects your thread from wear. And then we've got a little spacer bead, not a spacer bead, a crimp cover as well. So I'm going to show you how to start. I'm going to show you how to end. So at the other end, we've got a jump ring, we've got a crimp cover, a bead, and an escape here, wire guardian for that end as well. So I'm just going to move that little lot to one side for now, because we're not going to be using that one, that little set at the beginning. We've got our knotting awl. So your knotting awl is kind of like a chunky pin. It's going to give you sort of the way to get your knots really nice and close to your pearls, because that's what we want. And I also use a pair of tweezers for my knotting style. Everybody knots slightly differently. Do what's best for you. This is the way that I do it. I've got some, these are thread cutters, they're not flush cutters, these are thread cutters, or you can use a nice sharp pair of scissors, or you can use your thread zapper. Now the other thing that you can use, let me just grab, so if you haven't got a thread zapper, you can use some glue, either some hypo cement on your knot or some E6000. I prefer to use my thread zapper because I know it seals really nicely, and it means I can just keep going. I don't have to stop at all. So if you're using glue, you do have to wait until it's completely dry before you continue. But I will tell you the point that you need glue on there. So that is the size of Nylon Power that I'm using. It's 2 meters and it's the number 5 size, which is 0.65 millimeters. So all the details will also be underneath this video in the description. And if there's anything you don't understand, like millimeters to centimeters to inches and things like that, a quick Google will sort you out. Right, let's get started. So we're going to take our thread. We need to kind of load up what we need to be at the end, really, the clasp part. So we're going to use, we don't cut the thread, we use the whole 2 meters and build it up from the other end. And then sometimes you can sort of maybe get 2 necklaces out of it, but more like you would get a necklace and a bracelet out of one of these cords. So what we need to do is we need to add our bead first. So we're going to add our bead. Then we are going to add our wire guardian. So that means we're going to go up one side of the wire guardian and then down the opposite side. I'm not threading them right to the end yet, because we'll do that all in one go. So I've gone up one side and down the other side, so you can see the threads going right around there. And then I'm just going to pop on through the jump ring, which is attached to my clasp. So through the jump ring, and that is going to sit inside that wire guardian. That's going to give you all that extra strength. So now I'm just going to start pulling that down. Keep pulling, pulling, pulling until we get in sort of near to the end. We don't want to be wasting a lot of the thread. So, and I'm going to come back down. So if I get all this just sat nicely. So you can see where this is sat in there. Now I'm going to come back down that bead and then it'll all come together. So I'm going to back down with my needle through that bead that we added at the beginning. Just pull all this. It's the most time consuming bit about this at the moment, while it's so long, is just pulling everything through. But don't cut it because you'll just be wasting it, because you need that needle attached. So now we're just going to take a few minutes. We don't want to be wasting too much, just to kind of make sure our thread's nice and smoothly around that wire guardian and just behaving itself. Now wire guardians, can you see it's slightly kind of open at the bottom there? What I tend to do, you can pinch it a little bit with your fingers, just pull it in a little bit. If it won't go in, just very gently with your pliers, pull that in a little bit, just so, see how that's sat a little bit nicer now. There we go, a little bit nicer underneath there. Now what we can do is, we've got two threads. We've got that little tail and we've got the actual working thread, the long thread. Now we're just going to tie two simple overhand knots in there. So I tend to go one way and then the opposite way. Right over left, then left over right. And that is going to give us a really nice knot at the bottom of that bead. Okay, I'm just going to give that a little tug. Right, so now I'm going to move the working thread, the long thread, out of the way, and I want to be working on this little piece here. Now what you're going to do, if you are using glue, you're going to cut this very short, you're going to add a dot of glue, and then you are going to leave it for however long your glue says it takes to fully set. Don't be tempted to go back to it, because you don't want glue on your pearls and things like that. But if you're using a thread zapper, you can cut your thread quite short, just leave a few millimeters, and then you are going to, let's just get this so I'm not going to burn my fingers. You're going to have that little bit of thread kind of stuck out to one side a little bit. Let's just take the safety off your thread zapper. If you don't have a thread zapper, this is by Beadsmith. They are fantastic. It just pops out and warms up. It's like a little element that warms up. Just give it a few seconds, and then you're just going to start to touch. Oh, this is hard when you're looking through the camera as well. I'm going to have to look at this, so hopefully we'll stay in focus. Just going to start melting away that little end, so it will melt and come together. Oh gosh, I didn't do that, did I? Thought I'd cut the thread then. Don't want to do that. We're just bringing that together. I can feel the heat there. Be very, very careful with your fingers. And just making sure that everything is nice. And there's still just a tiny little bit. Can you see that tiny little bit of thread there? I need to get rid of that. So just melt it in. There we go. And then push it in. Don't burn your fingers though. So just zoomed in a little bit for this. So you can pop your crimp cover over your knot. So we're just going to cover that knot basically. You can pop it over and just hold it on your fingers. Or if you find it a little bit tricky to do that, you can pop it down onto the mat and just kind of guide it into it until it's in the right spot, like so. But I prefer to just hold it over my finger. Now you're going to close your crimp cover. Now we want to make sure that the cord is going through the hole that's going to be in the crimp cover, and you're not going to trap anything. So just really take your time over this, and it really is just the slightest little squeezes, moving around the crimp cover, tiny little bit at a time, until we just seal this. You see, I'm not just squishing straight away. I'm just really, really taking my time, making sure I don't damage that thread, moving my pliers around until I'm happy that's become a full bead again. There's a slight gap there. There we go. So I'm really happy with that. We've got a really nice, neat looking beginning to our beautiful pearl and gemstone necklace. So that is how we get started. We have the clasp, a jump ring, wire guardian, the thread goes around the wire guardian through a plain bead, and then we tie the knot, seal the knot with a thread zapper or glue, and then we add that crimp bead to cover over, and everything is beautiful. Now, I tend to start off with a smaller bead when I start threading them on, just because I think it just looks more aesthetically nice than going from this tiny bead to like a bigger bead. So we're going to go with one of the rose quartz first. So I'm going to pop on my rose quartz onto my thread, then pull this all the way down like so. That's going to sit right next to that bead, and because it's a gemstone I don't need to worry about it rubbing against the metal in that bead. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop this into my hand, come around, so I've gone, so my gemstones are in my hand. Just let me pull that out a little bit. Whoops, wrong way. So my gemstones are in my hand. I'm just going to bring this all the way around the back of my hand, cross it over, and then I can just pull that through. So I'm basically tying a knot, pulling that thread through. So I've tied a knot. Okay, really basic knot. Now I'll zoom back in again. I'm just going to pull that knot a little bit smaller. I want it as close as possible to my bead. So this is where the knotting all comes in. Let's do this at a slight angle if we can. So we're just going to pull it nice and tight. This is why I don't undo all my beads at once, because I end up throwing them everywhere. So I want that to be nice and tight against my my bead. So the knot is actually around the knotting all at the moment. Now the mat that I'm using is a beading mat, and underneath there I have a macrame mat so I can press into it. So you do need, you can't just do it on a solid surface. Well, you could, but then you end up damaging your surface. So you need something nice and squishy to pop that into. Squishy but firm, does that make sense? So that is as tight as I can get it. Now I'm going to make sure that my tweezers are nice and handy. You don't have to have angled ones, any tweezers, not the ones that you do your eyebrows with, because they're a bit sharp. We don't want to be cutting the thread. So now I'm going to take out the knotting all without pulling it. And then I'm going to grab the thread and push that knot down towards my bead. So I'm just pushing that knot, and that knot will push right up the bead. You do need to do it with some force. Can you see that knot is right up to the bead now? Now the next thing you're going to do is add, whoops, a bit out of focus there. Add your next bead, or pearl in my case. So I'm going to add a pearl, beautiful fresh. Look at the colour of these pearls. They're absolutely, I don't think it comes across on the camera, but they're absolutely beautiful. So, and then the next little bit you can do just to help that knot is just give that a little push, and it will just make sure that is totally pushed up. So the whole point of knots are so that your beads are not rubbing against each other, especially with pearls, because they are an organic, they are natural. We don't want them to rub against each other because you could damage them. And also, if you were to break your necklace or bracelets, you don't want to be losing all. Can you imagine a whole string of pearls just falling on the floor like you see in like movies and things like that? You don't want to be losing all of those gemstones or pearls, whereas if they are knotted, if they were to snap, the most you're going to lose is 2, but more than likely you're just going to lose the 1. So now we need to make another knot. So again, I'm going to do this a few times, and then I'll move on to get to the opposite end. Let's just bring that out a bit again. Okay, so I tend to take it over my hand, put the gemstones or the end of the gemstones into your hand, take it over all the way around, and then I can just pull that through and make sure nothing's tangled. Pull my knot a little bit smaller, and then I'll go over to my knotting awl and pull that in. So I just make sure that is as tight as it can possibly be, like so. Give that a nice good pull. Then I'll remove the awl. You can see where the knot is there. Let's just zoom in a little bit. And then I'll just, making sure I don't pull anything, I will grab and then just push that knot as close as possible to that pearl, like so. So you can see that knot is buffed right up to the pearl, and then I can add my next gemstone. Just going to give that another little push. Always just check as you go along. If you get one of these knots and it's loose, you can unfasten it with the nylon, but if you were to be using silk, it would be very hard to unfasten. So just making sure you take your time. It's not a rushed job, is this? It's something that you really do take your time with. So we're just going to use that gemstone just to make sure we get that extra push on there, and you can see we've got our knots in there beautifully. I'm going to do this again. So I'm going to pop my gemstones into my hand, wrap over, cross over, and then this comes under here. It is basically just tying a very basic knot, so don't stress too much about that one. We're going to bring this down, pop our knotting awl in, pull this along. That will bring the gemstones up to it, nice and tight. Use whichever hand feels more comfortable. Make sure the knotting awl stays in until you're happy that knot is as tight as it can be on the awl. Then stop pulling and remove the awl. Move over to your tweezers and then gently push that knot towards your bead. There we go. See, that knot's nice and close now. Make sure you're not using any tweezers that are very sharp, not the really pointy ones, not too sharp. You don't want to be cutting that thread. Okay, we can add our next pearl. So we're just going to continue doing this until we get almost the length that we want. So I want you to finish with sort of the last pearl and the last gemstone, and then I will come back to you. We'll add those last couple of ones, and then we will add the end. So just continue on until you get to, imagine, about an inch to go to the actual length that you want. So just have something by you, a tape measure, a ruler, just so that you can work out exactly how long you want yours, and then we will come back and we'll finish off our beautiful necklace. So guess what? I just filmed the end part of my video and didn't press record. So I'm going to show you this one. So this is the finished article. So this is the little section we're going to be making. So, and clever me, I didn't press the record button. So we're just going to show you sort of from this last pearl. So as you're working along, you will have put your last pearl in. So you'll be putting the knot in there. And then we're going to do a knot just after this pearl and then finish off. So I'd like to say I meant to do that, but I didn't. So we're pretending that the rest of your necklace is here. We've got our last pearl, so we're going to do that last knot. So again, I'm going to go over, around, picking up our thread and just popping this down while we pop in our awl and create that last knot. So nice and tight. You'll have really got used to this by now, and it's easier once you've got like a little bit of weight of the necklace on there. So nice and tight in there, picking up my tweezers and pushing that knot right down. Let's just zoom in a little. So that would be my very last pearl that I'm adding. I'll just make a note, I made my necklace 16 inches and then I've added these last ones because I wanted mine to be 17, just because that's the length I prefer. So you can make it whatever length you want, but imagine that you're going to add an extra inch with the last gemstone and clasp section, end section. So we're going to add a rose quartz. Now we're not, after the very last rose quartz, we're not going to put a knot in there just yet. We are going to add, let me just grab one of my beads. So the next thing we're going to add is a bead. So we're mimicking the opposite side. We're just omitting that crimp cover at the moment because we're going to add that little piece last. So you will have your last pearl, a knot, your rose quartz, then a bead. Then you're going to add your wire guardian. So you're going to go up one side. Whoops, I just hit my light. And then down the other. Now just as you're coming down the opposite side, so you can just come through that opposite side, and you can just pop your jump ring on then to just make sure before you actually close any, pop your jump ring on, that if it is an open jump ring, that it is absolutely fully closed, because we want a beautiful piece of jewellery. Okay, and then you can just pop that jump ring on your needle, and it should just pop straight onto your wire guardian like so, and then you can bring the rest of your thread through. Okay, now we can come back down that bead, like so, and we're going to draw everything in together. So this will be easier, it will look easier when you've got an actual necklace to hold, like I had just a few moments ago. Remembering to just give that wire guardian a little wire guard, a little squeeze, not too much, and pull everything nice and quite tight together, because it will loosen up as we go. Okay, now our knot is going to go in this little section here. Let's just put that in a little bit more. There we go. So we don't want any loose thread. We want our knot to sit nicely. And what I've done is I've created a little loop and popped it across there. Then I'm going to bring the needle up through that loop, holding everything in position while I pull this loop. So this is tying a knot. It's a half hitch knot, and it's just going to go into that gap in between your gemstone and bead. Okay, it's going to look a little bit fiddly as this. It's going to pull that in, wiggle it until it will pull in. There we go. So now I've got one knot in there. Remember at the very beginning we did two, so we're going to add another one. Just make sure that's nice and tight, and then again make a little loop with your thread. So got a little loop just stuck out to one side, you can see that there. I'm just going to come up through that loop from behind, and then I can just draw that in so it sits in between. There we go. It's going to give that a nice pull. Now the batteries in my thread zapper are getting a bit low, so this is going to take a little bit longer than it would do. So we're going to cut this nice and short, not too long. Let's let my thread zapper warm up slightly. They normally get hot very, very quickly. There we go, it's actually been a bit better this time. So we're just going to melt, we're just going to melt that down and push it in so that we seal the knot. But we don't want to cut the knot, so do be very, very careful. Okay, so that knot is nice and sealed in there now. And then what you need to do is grab that crimp cover and persuade your knot to go inside it, like so. It'll tighten everything up also. And then it's just that little case of making sure you don't go too fast, just nibbling a little bit at a time with that crimp cover really nicely until we're fully closed. And there you have the end part of your necklace, which when it's attached it will look like this. So there we go, our completed necklace, matching at both sides. And you can make this any length you want. You could make it into a bracelet, but you have that really beautiful knotting technique, just very simply using a knotting awl, AWL if you wanted to search for them, and just a pair of tweezers, not the ones that are very sharp on the end, because you could cut your thread. I've chosen to use gemstones and pearls. You don't have to use pearls at all. It is classed as pearl knotting, but you can use any drilled gemstone bead that you like for a knotting technique. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget, all the ingredients for this demonstration were from my Relax and Craft box. There is a little video on that just previous to this video, all about what you get in it. It's basically a subscription box, and there are details down below this video also. Don't forget to like the video, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and also click the all button, click the bell, click all, and you won't miss any of my videos. Thank you so much for watching today. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you again really soon.